Hi, I'm Lee.
And I'm Carolyn.
And we're from AccuQuilt.
And we're here today to discuss with you the straight of grain of your fabric.
Grain? What does that mean?
Well, with every piece of fabric that you have, there's a lengthwise and a crosswise grain. Now, the lengthwise grain is going to be stronger, and there's not going to be nearly as much stretch as you would with the crosswise grain.
Okay, so I've got my bolt of fabric here, and I can see it's got a selvage edge. The selvage edge, you can look at the side of your bolt, it's a lot denser and thicker, and it's usually white or a solid color.
Right, that's an absolute giveaway there. And one easy way to remember when you're rolling it through your Go fabric cutter is you want to cut it with the lengthwise grain. So when there is a selvage on your fabric that you're running through, as we have with this die here, you can see just the edge of it right here. You want to make sure that it's parallel to the length of the cutter.
Okay.
And that will ensure that you are cutting with the lengthwise grain.
And the lengthwise grain is important because fabric stretches differently in different directions.
Right.
For example, if the selvage edge was cut off and you had a scrap of fabric, there's a really fast test to find out what's the lengthwise grain. So if you take your fabric and you pull it tautly, listen to the sound. It's a very high-pitched sound, and you can feel this is really tough to pull this way. It's very strong and stable. If I turn it 90 degrees and I pull it, you can see it's a lot more flexible and the sound will be a lot deeper. So the higher pitch and the stronger is the lengthwise grain. So when I lay this on the die, I'm going to put that parallel to the length of the cutter and then roll it straight through.
Sure. Now, one of the things that we didn't mention is why it's so important to cut with a lengthwise grain. And when you don't do so and you cut through with the crosswise grain, it can affect the finished size of your shape that you're cutting. So if you're cutting with squares or triangles,
Sure.
there may be a degree of shrinkage or whatever it may be. So that's why it is so critical to cut with the lengthwise grain.
Right. I mean, with the larger geometric shapes example, you can imagine if it's on the crosswise grain, your shape could stretch a little bit and it wouldn't be perfect. And that's why you want it along the lengthwise grain where it's much tighter. And I notice on your die, the die shapes, we get questions a lot, they're not lined up exactly centered. They're off on angles.
Sure. What you always want to do, and the reason that we do that is because so the straight of the blade does not hit the roller at the exact same time.
Kind of like going over a speed bump.
Exactly.
If you go at a slight angle, it gives more of a scissor action when you're cutting with the dies. So put your fabric on the lengthwise grain, just over the shape. You don't have to rotate your dies. You're going to keep it exactly the way it's built and go straight through.
And it will work fine.
Perfect. We love AccuQuilt because
Better cuts
make better quilts.